Hello, my name is Paul Mantey, and I am the BCS America's Virtualization Program Manager. And what I want to talk about today is the integrated by design message, which by now, if you've been through this video series, you've seen me talking about integrated by design. But what I'm going to talk about today is driving change. And I'm going to give you a little bit of history about this particular presentation. It is kind of new. I had the opportunity back in September to be hosted by an outstanding partner of ours. It was actually Vital Systems brought me into Omaha, Des Moines, and Iowa City. And they provided an absolutely stunning audience for each of those three locations, in that we had more than 7 or 8 CIOs in each of those locations. And actually in Des Moines we had the CEO of a mortgage company, and that was a fascinating conversation too, given the current times. So during those presentations, I was able to kind of add some new material to integrated by design and really start to capture what those executives were telling me that they were most concerned about from an IT perspective, what they were most worried about. And so this is why we're going to talk about driving change. So we'll start with one of my favorite quotes from a general. I guess he was the former U.S. Army Chief of Staff. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. And I think that is something that's very apropos now. But what I want to really talk about with change is Costanza. I've got another video where I do talk about George Costanza. And as everyone, except for our Kiwi friend here in the audience, recognizes George from the Seinfeld show. If you don't, somewhere in season 4 or season 5, it's worth going back, maybe Netflixing the episode. I think it's about opposites, and George has this realization that his life has turned out as bad as it has because his first instincts are so bad that he has to take them and do the exact opposite of what they do, and things actually start going well for him. And I often, when I'm presenting this, kind of make fun of the fact that this show is supposed to be about nothing, and here it's got actually, to me, what's probably one of the most deepest messages I've grabbed out of a show. And for the last half a year to a year, I've been traveling around and talking to customers about how change begins with them. They're the ones that have to change, right? And it was even funny. I was in front of one audience, and all of a sudden I started talking about, how this came home to roost when I took a 2-week trip with my mom to Scotland and Ireland. Is anyone here in the room ready to go do a 2-week trip with their mother? I'm getting a distinct shake of the heads, right? And I realized it was an incredible kind of epiphany that if I wanted my relationship to improve with my mom, who is 71 years old, is not going to change. That change is going to have to be me. And then I was really struck by the fact that here I am telling everybody else how we've got to change, and it came to roost right on me. And it was kind of funny because we were in Omaha, and I had one guy come up to me after my presentation. He says, "Oh, your stuff is excellent. This is really interesting, but it's not really applicable to me. You really ought to be talking to our applications department because you're perfect and they're not." Did you listen? Right? So change beginning with ourselves, and that's what I kind of want to talk. And when I've done this, and that's where I kind of take the Costanza principles. Look, folks, we can all talk about how rough it is in this economy. We can all talk about the problems we have, but unless we start changing, and actually it was funny because as we moved from city to city, Bob Drake, who was the partner business manager that I was working with, started telling me, because you were doing everything but throwing the gauntlet down at these CIOs to change. And so at the last venue, I did it. I threw the gauntlet down. I said, I challenge all of you let's do this. And that was when, and this was a really key learning for me, the CIOs all started running up to me with their cards asking me for help, which as a salesperson I find rather exciting, right? So this path, this thread started by talking with customers. We talked with a particularly large telco company here in the Executive Briefing Center about 3 months ago about what they are struggling with in terms of IT transformation or consolidation and virtualization projects. And this is what we came up with out of that discussion. One, there's a goal misalignment problem. I think those exist everywhere. Your goals may be different from your management's goals, right? Your goals may be a little bit not in alignment with the company's goals. The same is vividly true inside of an IT organization where often they're not entirely sure how to define who the customer is, so how can they line their goals up to meet with their customers' goals? I saw this in the lab, and I'm not going to name any names or even tell which lab it was, but we had some fascinating products that we've shipped. And on the manageability processor of one of them, for a while, we were running that old text-based Star Trek game from the 70s. Now, I'm pretty sure that was not on the goal list for what that project was supposed to ship. Right? It was pretty cool. I'm pretty sure it got removed. Process maturity. Does an IT shop understand what its processes are and how they align to those goals? I was in front of a major independent oil company in Houston, Texas, and I was talking to one of their second-level managers in IT. And I said, tell me about your processes. And he looked at me and goes, we don't have processes. What are you talking about? I said, you don't have processes? Because we're too busy for processes. And I asked him the question that kind of hung open in the air. I'm like, well, how do you know what you're doing and what you're so busy with is actually of importance to the company? So I don't want to start talking about processes with every company, because every time you kind of bring this up, they kind of start to view you as a bureaucrat. You say the word process, you're a bureaucrat, right? And as Russ Daniels has got a great joke, you know, the moment you start saying governance, now you're a fascist bureaucrat. So, but the idea is that we've got to have documented processes. We've got to have an understanding of how what we do day to day affects the top and bottom line of the company and affects the strategic goals of the company. And so the last one, which is borrowed really from manufacturing, failure analysis. Do we actually sit down as a group and figure out why that particular product launch didn't go the way we wanted it to, or why that particular deal that we're selling to our customers didn't go like we wanted it to, or why, as an IT shop, we're not meeting our SLAs? Do we do the failure analysis and then track it back to really who the people are? Now, this is the kind of thing your customers, your CIOs, are struggling with on a day-to-day basis. In fact, the VP of Infrastructure and Operations for the telco I was telling you about earlier, he said, my biggest problem is I know where I am today, I know where I want to get to tomorrow. How do I convince the people that are on board to make that change? So what I want to talk about right here, and kind of taking a brief moment from that, how do we change, how do we get from where we are today to where we're going, is what we are capable of delivering as people at work. So I got the opportunity, if you ever get the opportunity to hear Gary Hamel speak, take it. He is outstanding. But he's developed a hierarchy of human capabilities of what we bring to the workplace. And he says, at the minimum, we bring obedience, diligence, and intellect. I show up for work on time, I do my job, and I apply some amount of brain power because I'm a knowledge worker to the job I do. He goes, and if you get that, you're really only getting maybe half of the potential of what a person is actually capable of delivering at a workplace. But he says, unfortunately, the vast majority of the way we manage our people demands this. Because the other ones that we get, that we really are trying to get out of people, is their initiative, their creativity, and their passion. And if we can set up a management